Hello there, and welcome to the 12th video in the Port series, my adventure in switching to private, open, and responsible technology. In today's video, I'm going to target people who are perhaps newcomers to Linux by showing you how to download and install a Linux distribution meant for absolute beginners, Elementary OS. I'll be showing you how to do this both on your actual computer and also on a virtual machine, which lets you try out Linux in a safe environment without making any changes to your device. Now, if you don't know what a virtual machine is, don't worry, I'll also show you how to get started with that too. Although using Linux is not necessarily the only way to protect your privacy, it's pretty much the only way you can use an open, as in open source, operating system. Windows and macOS are both proprietary, and although there are other open source systems like FreeBSD and Haiku, Linux is definitely the most mature system with the widest community and available applications. But not all Linux distributions are suitable for beginners, and that's where Elementary OS comes in. In a recent video, I ran through the best Linux distributions for different use cases, and Elementary was my choice for best distribution for beginners. So that's what I'm getting started today. Elementary OS is a Linux distribution based on Ubuntu that bills itself as a thoughtful, capable, and ethical replacement to macOS and Windows. As far as Linux distributions go, Elementary OS is quite unique. First, it forgoes the leading GNOME and KDE desktop environments in favor of Pantheon, a beautiful and simplified desktop environment very reminiscent of macOS. And like macOS, the environment offers far fewer customization options than Linux users are used to. And that's on purpose, to offer the simplest experience possible. Another unique feature of Elementary is that rather than being a Linux distribution, Elementary is more of a platform, with Elementary themselves and third-party developers able to build apps specifically for this OS, meaning they look very polished, such as adhering to the system theme and integrating well with the Pantheon desktop environment. Now, that being said, Elementary OS is based on Ubuntu, so the tens of thousands of applications that work on Ubuntu should also work on Elementary. Finally, another interesting quirk of Elementary is the pay-what-you-want model, both for the OS itself and the curated apps. When downloading the system or an app from the App Center, you can choose how much to pay, starting from absolutely nothing, $0, to $5, $10, $15, or any custom amount you want. This basically allows you to try out an application for free and then support the development of that app if you find it useful. Now, skeptics initially said this would never work, but it actually has. And this is a source of income for both the Elementary team as well as third-party app developers. Okay, so now it's time to get Elementary OS installed. Now, if you are an absolute beginner and you're not comfortable using things like a command line interface, I would strongly recommend you do this on your actual computer and don't bother with the virtual machine. Now, the reason for this is that in order to get Elementary installed on a VM, well, you need to install some sort of virtual machine environment, and also you do need some terminal commands towards the end to get it to look good, like with the proper resolution and stuff. Now, I'm gonna guide you through everything and show you exactly what you need to do, but if you're a really basic user, I suggest you just get it on your computer without bothering with the VM. When you boot into Elementary OS, you can try out demo mode. This lets you use all the features of Elementary OS, but without making any changes to your system. Once you're done, restart your computer, unplug the flash drive, and you're back to Windows or macOS. So that's what I would recommend. Regardless, I'm going to be showing you how to do both. Now, obviously, if you're installing Linux for the first time, you're not going to be doing this from Linux. So here I am on a typical Windows 11 machine, and our first job is to download Elementary OS. So what you need to do is go to elementary.io, and from here you can see that it says purchase Elementary OS. Now, I do highly recommend that if you find Elementary OS useful, you actually buy it. However, this is a pay-what-you-want model, so you can actually use it for free with zero restrictions. So for now, since I'm just doing a demo video, I'm going to click custom here and just put a 0 in there, and that allows me to download Elementary OS. So I'm going to go ahead and click download. Okay, so it's a 2.5 gig file, so we'll just let this thing download in the background. Now, once the download is complete, what you'll need to do is put this on some sort of medium so you can install it on your system. So if you're installing this on hardware, your actual laptop or whatever, then you need to either burn this to a DVD or flash it to a pen drive or some sort of other USB storage. If you're installing this on a virtual machine, you don't need to do anything. Just this file will be enough. So if you're going to install on a VM, you can go ahead and skip the next part. If you actually intend to install this on your physical machine, then what you'll need is to download Balena or Balena, I think it's Balena Etcher. So Balena Etcher is a really nice free utility that allows you to flash an ISO file, which is what we've downloaded, onto a pen drive or whatever. Okay, it's super easy to use. So all we need to do is click download for Windows, and that's downloading. Okay, so remember, you only need this program if you're going to install on your physical machine. If you're going to use a VM, just this ISO file is enough. Okay, so go ahead and open the file I've just downloaded. And I'll just go ahead and install it. Balena is also available for macOS and Linux. Okay, so that's Balena Etcher done. So now what we need to do is choose the file that we want to flash. So I'll click Flash from File, and from my Downloads folder, I'm going to choose the Elementary OS ISO that we just downloaded. Next, I need to select a target. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my USB drive into my laptop. Okay, so I've just plugged in my USB device. So I'll click select target, and as you can see, this is the one I want, my lacy rugged key. Make sure you're choosing the right device, okay? If I click show hidden here, yeah, you don't want to flash your system disk, okay? So make sure you choose this, and then just click flash. And what will happen is that the ISO file is going to be flashed on that pen drive. I'll go ahead and click yes here, and the flashing process will begin. Now, once that's done, all you need to do is power off your laptop, computer, or whatever, plug the USB drive into your device, and boot into the installer. Now, just in case it doesn't boot into the installer, you'll need to use your BIOS options to define the boot drive. Now, unfortunately, this really depends on what BIOS you have or what UEFI you have installed. I'm including a few screenshots here of common motherboard firmwares, but you'll need to refer to the manual for your computer or motherboard to figure out how to do this. Many times it just involves pressing a button whilst you are booting your system to select the boot drive. Okay, so the flashing is complete. Balena will then verify that everything is okay, and in my case the verification is done as well. And that's it. We're done. And so now we have a USB key with which we can install Elementary OS. Now, just in case you don't want to do this on your actual physical computer, you can instead use a virtual machine, which will basically run Linux on top of Windows, macOS, or whatever else you're currently running, without making any changes to your computer. Now, to do this, you'll need some virtualization software. If you don't have any, one easy-to-use example is VirtualBox, which you can get at virtualbox.org. Remember that all links are down in the video description. So I'm going to go ahead and download VirtualBox, and in this case, I'm going to choose Windows hosts, since this is what I'm installing on, and I'll click Open File, and I'll just get VirtualBox installed. And here we are in VirtualBox. Now, before we go ahead and create the virtual machine, another thing I'm going to do is install the extension pack. Okay, you can see here VirtualBox extension pack. I'll click this, and then this will just download a file. And when you open this file, it will open with VirtualBox. And just click install, read the license agreement, and click I agree. And that's it. The extension pack has been installed successfully. So now all we need to do is create the virtual machine. Now this is actually really easy. Just click the new button and give it a name. I'm going to call it Elementary OS 6.1. For type, I'll choose Linux. And for version, now of course, there's not going to be Elementary OS in this list, but you can choose Ubuntu 64-bit, since that's what Elementary is based on. Click Next. Set the amount of RAM you want to give to the virtual machine. Now in my case, I'm going to give it 4 gigabytes, which is 4096 megabytes. Okay. Don't give it more than half of the total memory available on your machine, guys. So I'll click Next. I'll say create a virtual hard disk now. And I'll say create. You're asked for the hard disk type. The default is fine. Choose dynamically allocated. This means that the disk will only be as big as the stuff you've installed rather than being a fixed size. And I can then choose the size of the disk. Now, in my case, I'm going to set this to, let's see, 15 gigabytes, which should be more than enough. Okay, so now one other thing we need to do is to attach the ISO file we downloaded to this virtual machine. So I'll click Settings, I'll go to Storage, and as you can see, there's a CD drive here, which is currently empty. So all I need to do is click on this little CD icon and click Choose a Disk File, and then from my downloads, I will choose the ISO we downloaded earlier. And click OK. And that's basically it. Hello, Keith from the future here. It could be that if you're trying to install Elementary on VirtualBox, the default screen size is so small that you can't actually see anything. Luckily, this is easy to fix. Click on Settings, then go to System, Motherboard, and click Enable EFI. And this should get you with a screen size large enough so you can actually continue. So now, whether you are going to install your system on a physical device, in which case you've plugged the disk in and restarted your computer, or whether you are going to install this on VirtualBox, the process from now on is the same. In my case, I'm installing it in VirtualBox, so I'll just click Start. And as you can see, it says booting Elementary OS live disk. And I'm just going to go ahead and take this to full screen with View Full Screen Mode. Okay, so here we are with the installer for Elementary OS. Now this is super simple, guys. So I'll just choose my language and I'll click Select. And then I'll choose the variant of language I want, which in my case is UK. Then I'll test my keyboard layout. Yep, that seems to be the right one for me. Okay. Now I can either try demo mode or erase disk and install, or do a custom install. Now the demo mode is very cool. It lets you try Elementary OS without making any changes at all to your system. So if you're really new to Linux, you may want to try this out. But this is an installation tutorial, not a demo tutorial, so I'm going to click Erase Disk and Install. Now, do bear in mind that this will erase anything on your current hard disk. So if you want to do a dual boot, for example, so to have Windows and Linux on the same machine, then you'll want to do a custom install instead. However, in my case, I'm going to click Erase Disk and Install. Now, if you're installing on a virtual machine as I am, you will get this warning saying that Elementary OS may run slowly. You can safely ignore the message. We'll choose our hard disk and click Erase and Install. And then we can choose whether we want to encrypt our device. Now, normally I would say yes, go ahead and do this for your own security. But in my case, since this is just a demo, I'm going to say don't encrypt. And the installation will begin.
A few moments later.
Okay, so the installation has completed. As you can see, it says it has been installed. And we can either restart the device or shut down. Now, what I would recommend if you're installing this in a VM is to do a shutdown rather than a restart. And I'll show you why in a second. If you're doing this on an actual device, then just go ahead and restart. So here we are back in VirtualBox, and what I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier is I'm going to go back to settings, storage, and as you can see there's that disk here that we had selected. I'm going to click on this CD icon and say remove disk from virtual drive. Now the reason I'm doing this is that so there's nothing in the CD drive, so the only thing that the virtual machine can boot from is the actual hard disk, which we now have Elementary OS installed on. Now if instead you're doing this on a physical machine, all you need to do is after restarting, remove the pen drive or USB disk that you use to install the system, or if you use the DVD, just eject that DVD. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start it again, and we should start into Elementary OS. So we're booted back, and I'll choose English as my language, and I'll also make sure my keyboard is working fine, which in this case is this layout. And here we get to create an account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say, let's see, Tech Guru, and I'll choose a password. Ideally one which matches. And I'll click Finish Setup. And all I need to do now is log in. Okay, and we get to the welcome screen. Now, chances are, if you've installed Elementary OS on your computer, everything is looking fine. But if you've installed it on a virtual machine like VirtualBox, it looks like this, tiny. So we need to install the drivers here. So what we need to do is go to Applications and then Terminal. And in here type sudo apt update 2 ampersand sudo apt upgrade. So this will just make sure that your system has all the latest updated packages. Okay, that's done. So now we'll just need to install some utilities we need using sudo apt install build-essential and module-assistant. And then one more command we need to run is sudo m-a space prepare. Now this last command is not strictly speaking required, however I've seen it recommended in quite a few guides, and so I'm going to do it. Okay, that's done. So now, from our virtual machine, I'm going to go down here, if you're in full screen mode, and just click Devices, Insert Guest Additions CD Image. Now it will say, could not find the disk image file. Do you want to download it? We'll say yes, download. And as you can see, it's downloaded. And I'll click Download again. And now I will click Insert. So that has inserted the CD image, but as you can see, nothing has happened on Elementary OS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type BLKID, and as you can see, there is this item here. This is actually the CD image. Okay, so what I need to do is mount this. Okay, for some reason it doesn't happen automatically on Elementary OS. So I'll say sudo mkdir /media/cd-rom, and then sudo mount /dev/sr0/media/cd-rom. Okay, so now I can go into that folder, and there are the files that we need. So now all I need to do is sudo sh vbox linux additions.run. And this will install the guest additions. Alright, now as we can see from this message, we do need to restart the system. Since we're in the terminal anyway, I'll just say sudo reboot. Okay, so as you can see, we're back here in Elementary OS. And so now, as you can see, the resolution is better. So I can go to View, Full Screen Mode, and I can now adjust my resolution by going here and saying something like, 4K, for example, and apply. Okay, so now that you're here, you can go through the Elementary OS setup guide. I'm going to choose a dark theme because that's how I roll. You can also connect your online accounts, get some apps, and do whatever you want. Now again, this isn't a tutorial on how to use Elementary OS. We're just interested in getting it installed. However, you'll notice down here I have a web browser, email client, tasks, calendar, music, and videos, photos, the system settings, which you might want to take a look at, and the famous App Center. So this is where you can get new apps for your system. So for example, I can go to graphics here, and I can choose some app. Now you'll notice here that there are paid apps. These are specifically designed to be perfectly integrated with Elementary OS, and then there are obviously the free apps. Now if, for example, I go to, I don't know, this palette app here, you can see that it's a $6 app, and in many cases these apps are actually worth buying. However, if you click here, you can actually change the amount you want to pay. And you can actually set it to 0, say pay 0 and use the app anyway, okay? And it will work just fine with no limitations, and you get access to all the features of the app. Now again, what I would recommend is that you first try out an app for free, see if it's good for you, and then if you like it enough, go ahead and give the developer a tip, since it supports the entire open source community. Okay, so this is basically how Elementary OS rolls, and it is a model that actually does work. So that's it. You now have Elementary OS installed. As you've seen, installing Elementary OS is really not that difficult. In fact, I'd say that installing it is just as easy as macOS, and arguably even easier than Windows. The only problem for beginners here is that they have to install it at all. When you bought your computer, it probably already had Windows or macOS on it. Getting new version is just as simple as running an update. But you probably didn't get a computer or laptop with Linux pre-installed, which adds the steps of choosing a distribution, flashing it to a USB stick, and then installing it or running it in a VM. And the running it in a VM part, not as easy as it could be. It would be nice if after installing the system, it came up with the perfect settings without having to install additional tools. But once you've actually installed Elementary OS, everything is super smooth sailing. It's super easy to use, even for an absolute beginner. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And more than that, I hope you found it useful and you'll give Elementary a try. If you have found the video useful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel Tech Guru. It really helps to keep me motivated. Also, if you're like one of these people on screen now, please consider subscribing to me on Patreon, where you can support me financially and in return get perks, such as early access to videos, access to an exclusive patron-only chat, your name in the credits, and more. Finally, remember that if you don't want to watch me on YouTube, you can also catch me on Odyssey, which is an open video platform, where you can watch my videos and thousands of others. Well, that's it for this time. As always, thanks for watching.